I'll just introduce myself. I'm President and CEO of Simpson Seeds in Moose Jaw. We're a family-owned pulse company, and Seeds doesn't really say what it is that we do. That's what we initially started. That comes out of my seed background with Agriculture Canada. You could also call us the lentil company, possibly, because that's really what we do focus in on. Like I said, it's family-owned. We have 4 facilities, 2 in Moose Jaw, including a red lentil splitting plant, 1 in Swift Current, and a facility in Kyle. We have 96 employees, and we're exporting to 70 countries worldwide. So right now, I'd consider ourselves one of the largest independent exporters of lentils out of Canada. But it's not about me, it's about Dr. Al Slinkard, and I wanted to touch base on a couple of things and how we got introduced. I was a student here at the University of Saskatchewan when Dr. Slinkard was teaching me crop science and the ins and outs of growing pulses. And back in 1974-5, when I started here, you have to remember that in Moose Jaw, it was wheat, summer, fall, wheat. It was a pretty boring scene in Moose Jaw. And when I came to Saskatoon, I was introduced to all these new ideas, including pulse crops. And so by the spring of 75, I asked Dr. Al if I could have a meeting and entertain the prospects of putting some peas in the farm in Moose Jaw. And Al said, sure, I think as long as you get him in by May 15th, you can beat the heat, and it's probably not a bad idea. So interestingly enough, Vicki Dutton's here tonight, and I actually went to university with her brother George Cody, and went up to North Battleford, and I dug some Trapper peas out of his bin, and paled them into some bags and hauled them down in a half ton as much as I could get down there without dragging the bumper on the highway. Ran it through a Link screen machine in an elevator in a barn at one of our neighbors. More peas came off the scalping deck and on the barn floor that ended up in the clean grain side of things. But nonetheless, got some Trapper peas, commercial cleaned in a barn on a Link seed cleaner, put into a John Deere disker, and proceeded to seed some peas. And somehow, miraculously, I pulled off a crop. And Dr. Al, I'm sorry, but I didn't get him in by May 15th. It was the May long weekend, and they still made it. So I pushed the limits. But one thing I did learn, there is opportunities at the other side of taking some risks, and that's one of the things that happened. I also wanted to just stop and pause there for a moment, because there's a couple things that when I started thinking about, things that when I think of Dr. Al, what are the things that come to mind? Well, first of all, I wore this jacket for a reason. Does anybody know the similarity between Matlock and Dr. Al Slinkard? It was his suit. This light blue colored suit was iconic for what Dr. Al wore back in the 70s and 80s. And I don't know if his wife Maureen remembers that, but I'm not going to give it up. But I wore it specifically for you, because I'm reminded of this color. It was his favorite suit, I'm sure, and got well worn. The other thing that Dr. Slinkard is well known for is rules of thumb. And I'm sure you heard of lots of his rules of thumb. Back in the days when Pulse Days was known as Farm and Home Week, pardon me, at the Quant Theater here at the university, Dr. Al would stand in front of all of us in the industry, in particular growers, and he'd say, we have some rules of thumb, because he'd ask for wisdom. So, Dr. Al, what do you think about the prospects and the competitive of lentils, and can they compete with wheat? Well, he says, well, here's the rule of thumb. He says, take a price of wheat, and if you could double that price in lentils, that's your break even. So that was a rule of thumb. And then this is, well, what about these currencies and the competition from the United States? Well, the other rule of thumb was if we could stay at 80 cents Canadian, we'd actually probably have a pretty good chance of competing against the Americans, just because that 20% advantage on currency. Well, some of those rules of thumbs don't apply today, because we know the dollar traded over par, and we were actually sitting around 97 cents today. But that's a testimony to the fact that the breeding program has successfully accelerated the yields and the quality to the point where we're even competing at the dollar where it is today. So look out if we see pulses come back, or the dollar come back to something like an 80 cents, and we're just going to really take over. For those who don't know what kind of production numbers we have here in Saskatchewan, back in 1975 there was virtually no lentils, and today there's 2.45 million acres, and most of them are in Saskatchewan, and that's one of the legacies that we can think about when we start thinking about Dr. Al Slinkard. Another thing that I could think about that as far as a legacy is the variety layered lentils. And that variety was the first variety that we grew in our seed farm in Moose Jaw in 1980. And to this day, even though we have multitudes of other versions of the layered variety, we still will not change the name Laird, because the name Laird is so iconic and it has such a brand globally that we don't dare fool around with that name. So you can call it Greenland, or you can call it this or call it that, and add the CL to the back end of it, or CDC, but it's Laird that's the iconic name in the world, and I don't think that's ever going to change. So anyways, I just wanted to say I was trying to keep this down to 2 to 3 minutes, and I know I'm standing between you and this, I think it's bison tenderloin coming. So, but I just wanted to say that Dr. Slinkard, in terms of a legacy, I could say definitely that when I look back over my life, my career, that you're one of those men that had a major impact on me, that shift to go from wheat, to take the risk on pulses, to build a plant, and to have you around to encourage us as an upstart company that knew nothing about exporting. So the legacy from my point of view is, if you take a look at Simpson Seeds, there's my generation, we call ourselves G2s. So my dad's G1, I'm the G2, my brother Tom and John, myself are the G2s, but we have 6 G3s, the next generation, in Simpson Seeds, and 96 employees, and a plan to go to G4. I talked to my granddaughter just a few weeks ago. She's 13 years old, and she says, Grandpa, do you think there's a chance when I grow up that I could work for Simpson Seeds? So we have a multi-generational family business that is anchored on what Dr. Al Slinkard did. And I just want to say God bless you, and thank you for your commitment to this industry.